Every year for Advent, we get the same four themes. The first week is always going to be hope, and the second week is always going to be peace for us. Peace is an interesting word, and most often we talk about it in the context of militaries and nations. A famous saying is that Rome creates a desert and then calls it peace. That was a saying during Jesus and the Apostle Paul's time. Rome makes a desert and calls it peace. And that's the Pax Romana. That's the peace of Rome, or the peace of this world, is the absence of war. That's how most people think about peace, is the absence of war. We sing a song around here. It often ends our gathering together where we bless one another. May the Lord's face shine upon you. And it ends with shalom, shalom. And that's a tricky word because it comes to us from the Hebrew tradition, and it's so much more than just a greeting, shalom, although you do say it when you meet somebody. And it's so much more than peace. Shalom is goodness realized. It is the opportunity for flourishing. It is connection, wholeness, integration, community. Shalom is a really big concept. And so when we talk about peace, we really need to be careful that we don't just focus on the absence of violence or the absence of war, but the presence of goodness, possibility for flourishing, and wholeness in community, connection. It's just such a big idea. And I don't know if you grew up in a family where home life was very peaceful, or if you've ever been in a relationship, whether it's with a roommate or a romantic partner, but when there is not peace in the home, it is one of the most unsettling things you can experience. There's a reason that the angel said, peace on earth, goodwill to all. And that has echoed throughout the centuries because that proclamation of peace is something really delightful and attractive about our concept of peace. When peace isn't present, not much else happens or can happen because so much of our energy goes into the conflict, trying to stabilize or reconcile or get out of a dangerous situation. It is about all that can happen. So the possibility of flourishing is diminished or denied when there is no peace. Last week I talked about this book, The Starfish and the Spider. At the beginning of this book is a fascinating analogy that since the 1960s, scientists have been hooking up humans to monitor their brain activity in the hopes of locating where memories are stored in the brain. I find this a fascinating thing because it turns out that the human mind and body isn't like a machine. It isn't like a filing cabinet where there is a top-down order, and that if you want to access any one memory, let's say your first memory of Christmas. Well, if you wanted to access your first memory of Christmas, it's not like you can go into the archives, rummage through a filing cabinet, find memory ST437, and pull that out and go, oh, I love this memory. That's not how memories work. It turns out that memories are stored when different areas of the brain are stimulated. It is that constellation, that configuration that creates the memory and is how you access the memory. That the different neurons in your brains, when the synapses fire at the same time, it's that shape that gives shape to the memory. That's how it's created and accessed and changed later. Once I learned this thing about how memory works, it became one of those little things that you carry around with you. And sometimes you'll see a situation and you'll think, I can't quite make sense of what I'm looking at. And so sometimes I'll pull out this little starfish and spider thing and I'll look at it. And in these themes of Advent, I find a commonality, which is this. I'm going to present this idea to you today. Peace doesn't exist in any one place. It is when different elements are stimulated at the same time that the shape of peace is created. Okay, so that's our word picture for today. So I want to present to you at least 3 levels, like the different areas of your brain, the different neurons that have to be stimulated for a memory. Here's the 3 levels I think that peace exists at. And when the shalom of connection, when they are configured together, bring about what our hearts long for. So the first is this. I want you to consider an idea that peace doesn't primarily live in an abstract realm, like an ideal, like world peace, like that old Coke commercial. I want to teach the world to sing, right? It's not out there. Primarily, I want to propose, peace makes its home within you. Peace lives in you, or wants to. Peace wants to live within you, wants to be at home in you. I have several friends who have become chaplains. They no longer work in the local church context, or they have added. And so I have a lot of chaplains in my life. And I'm not called to be a chaplain, but they have to go through this training, and part of it is called Clinical Pastoral Education, CPE. And if you've ever met somebody who's been through CPE, you will know it, because they can't stop talking about it. It's like a vegan or somebody who's in a multi-level marketing scheme. They will bring it up. It's a cult. No, I'm kidding. It's really good. It's really good. I'm joking. One of the elements of CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, is to foster in you a discipline, create a place in you where you are so centered and grounded, peace dwells. That even in elevated circumstances and situations, where, say, a family is grieving or there's an emergency or whatever it is, the goal is for you to be the least stressed or the least animated, the least inflamed person in any situation. To be the calming presence in any given room. And as I hear my friends talk about this process, about 1.5 years ago, I realized that I could benefit from this part of CPE. That as a challenge, I took it on to say, I wonder if I could be the calmest presence in any crisis. And I've been going for the last 1.5 years on an interesting journey, because it turns out it's not as easy as saying, I'm going to remain calm no matter what happens. It turns out, in order to remain calm when things are agitated and inflamed, you actually have to do a lot of work behind the scenes and get yourself organized internally and centered. You got to process your own stuff so that in the moment, here's the other thing about crisis. You rarely know it's coming. It's often a surprise. right? Like you think, hey, I'm really looking forward to this morning. Surprise! No, you're not. Like those chaos commercials. Being the calmest or the most centered or the presence of peace, turns out it takes a lot of hard work ahead of time so that you have postured yourself and you have practiced that when things come up, that you have internally organized yourself in such a way that you can be the presence of peace in the room or a calming influence. You can de-escalate a situation without your own stuff coming up or right? Because that's not the time to do your processing. It turns out it happens ahead of time. And I have to tell you, the last year and a half has been quite a learning situation for me, because it turns out there are things that press my bruises that I didn't realize it's why I responded in situations the way that I did. But because I want to be the presence of peace in any given situation, I want to be the calmest or the most centered or grounded that I can be in order to be available to what other people need in that moment. It turns out that in order for peace, and I don't know if this is going to be your experience, but it turns out for me, in order for peace to feel at home in me, I had to move out some old junk. I had to make room. I had to clear out some old baggage in order for there to be enough space for peace to make her dwelling. Turns out peace doesn't like a crowded house. It's not a recipe for peacefulness. So that's the internal part, that peace lives in you. The second part is that peace lives between us. So it dwells within, but it also dwells between. My father passed away more than a year ago, and in the 3 years before he passed, he had started working on a project. For those of you who don't know, my dad had a church history background. That was his training and his education, specifically early Methodism, the 1700s, and then in the 1800s in America. He was fascinated with the early Methodists. And one of the things he was working on is that he lamented to me that when we talked about holiness, or wholeness, but holiness, we meant it had become one-dimensional. And what we meant was personal piety. That my internal morality is what we mean when we talk about holiness. For those of you who don't know, early Methodists were known as the Holiness Club. It was like sort of what they were known for. But that over the years that it had migrated and evolved, and holiness had just become about my individual personal piety. And what had been dropped entirely in this historic drift was a concept that the original Methodists had, which is called social holiness. The way that you and I treat one another. A social holiness. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but sometimes two people who both think they're pretty good people can disagree about something. Like, I'm a good person, and Ted's a really good person, but I don't agree with him on much of anything. I'm just kidding, Ted. Your wife told me to say that, by the way. All right. Yeah, I know. Ted may be a good moral guy, right? And I might have a good sense of my own morality, and we passionately disagree on an issue. But how we treat each other in that moment is a social holiness. And it has been dropped entirely from our spirituality and religious practice of social holiness that we don't practice and attend to how we treat each other. You take care of you, I'll take care of me. Don't step on my toes. That's about as far as we get. And it is a real loss. We're poorer for it. Social holiness is that peace lives between us. It is the energy that connects us. And then as a web, a congregation and a community and a larger state, it is our social holiness, how we treat each other, in which peace can live. It's why the Christian tradition has things like repentance and forgiveness and reconciliation built in to its DNA. Because humans are going to make mistakes. We are going to hurt each other's feelings. And when that happens, it's really important that we let each other know, quietly at first, hey, I don't know if you meant it that way, but that's how this affected me. And then if somebody tells you that you've offended or hurt them, for you to say, I am so sorry, I was having a bad day, or I didn't mean it that way, can you please forgive me? I didn't realize how that impacted you. And for reconciliation to happen, it's why it's built in, is because peace dwells between us. And then here's the third and final level that I'll talk about this morning. It is only when peace lives within and between that you and I and we can start to dream about a peace beyond. Something higher than ourselves. That when the peace level, which we'll compare here to like a lake, when they close the dam and the water level begins to rise, it's when peace dwells within and peace dwells between, that the level of peace begins to rise, and you and I can start to have different conversations about what peace would look like in the bigger picture. Where I think we're missing this conversation about peace is that if we are in chaos and we live in a culture of chaos, it's tough to then go, you know what would be great? If peace would come riding over the horizon like the Calvary and save us. If an otherworldly peace would descend and fix this, that'd be great. And I have a growing suspicion that's not how it works. No one's coming to save us from this mess we've made for ourselves. Therefore, peace begins with me. And then with us. And as the peace level begins to rise, we can start to reach for the things that are out of reach, like peace on earth and goodwill for all. Consider it. Amen? I'm going to ask if you will stand as you are able. We're going to sing our closing song. I will just let you know by way of introduction that Advent has some songs like this one we're going to sing that are sort of slower and more reflective and meditative. And then as we get closer to Easter, we begin ramping up to things like Oh Holy Night and some of our bigger songs. But I'm really enjoy Advent and how we get to sing some of these songs. We only sing them once a year. So as this is familiar to you, I'm going to ask that you sing out enthusiastically.